Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 672. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Until this week, Disciplined Agile was a topic we had not investigated on the Software Process and Measurement Cast. Mark that rectified. Disciplined Agile, DA, is an approach to scaling Agile development. Today, Jonathan Lee and I discussed Disciplined Agile and reinventing yourself to stay relevant in a dynamic world. Mr. Lee's bio. Jonathan has over 25 years of diversified IT consulting experience working with private and public sector clients. His latest passion is in Agile coaching and delivering disciplined Agile training to individuals and organizations that want to transform themselves to practice business agility. Jonathan is a Certified Disciplined Agile Instructor. Jonathan has volunteered at the PMI Chicagoland Chapter for many years, serving on the board, including serving as the chapter president for 3 years in the past. Jonathan is a frequent speaker at PMI chapters in North America. Are you ready to be introduced to Disciplined Agile? It's time for the interview. Jonathan Lee, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you for the invitation here. It's an honor to be part of your podcast.
Jonathan, you and I are colleagues. We work a lot for the same company in Chicago, so we have some relationship. I just want to put that on the table so that it's people don't go, "Wow, I should have known that you guys knew each other." I don't think we've ever actually worked together yet. I'm looking forward to that, by the way. We'll do that someday, I hope.
Likewise. Absolutely.
Been on panels together before, and that's always been fun. Jonathan, tonight I'd like to wrestle with the whole idea of disciplined agile. Why don't we start with something real basic? How do you spell it? No, I'm lying. Please don't do that. What is disciplined agile? We might call that DA, right? Is that
sure?
People do that?
Yep, people call it either Disciplined Agile or they just simply say DA.
Okay, so what is it?
Well, just to give you some background, DA is a organization or company that was initially founded back in 2009 by Scott Ambler and Mark Lyons. They had many years of experience in Agile practices, and so they created this Disciplined Agile Consortium, an organization. And then in 2019, Project Management Institute acquired them, along with NetObjects, which brought in Al Shalloway, one of the other thought leaders in Agile as well. So in a nutshell, when you say what is Disciplined Agile, DA is a toolkit of Agile strategies and practices that leverages knowledge from a variety of Agile, Lean, and other various traditional sources, for example. And, you've heard of Scrum or SAFe or XP, and obviously PMBOK, traditional way of working as well. So it takes all the various different practices and puts it in a toolkit. It's like you can think of it as if you have many years of experience, whether it's a project management or an Agile way of working, after every project or initiatives or product development, you record for yourself, here's some of the things I did work well, and use it for the future opportunities, right? And so you can think of DA as it actually creates that for you. Obviously, it's not yours, but it gives you the knowledge of someone that has done this so that you can leverage it, so that you're not starting from a blank slate. That's the best way I would describe it. That's the beauty of it. Or some people could say it's a cliff note, but it's more than a cliff note. It just basically, it enables you to ask the right question or ask yourself, well, if I'm doing this, what are some of the things I should consider? And that's where really DA shines and gives you, hey, here are some of the things that have been done by past experts or individuals. And so this is what you can look at and consider it. If it works for you, use it. If you say, that just doesn't make any sense to me, then you can ignore it, right? But it gives you that basis to start with. And I would say that, when years ago, when I took like CSM or other PSMs or these type of certification, you go and they tell you about how to do Agile, right? And they give you the Scrum ceremonies and artifacts and all that. And what I recall is when I walked out of there, it's like, so what's next? Where do I start? And the simple answer was, well, it's a self-organizing team. You figure it out. It's like in Chinese or Asian movies where you have a master and then the grasshopper goes, oh, master, what should I do? And you just look to the master and he kind of gives you something and you in hopes that you can figure it out and you're not quite sure what to do. And that's how I felt when I first, for example, took the CSM. And so when I realized or heard about DA and start reading about it, I'm like, these are the things that I really wanted to learn, that I wanted to know. I'm not saying just because I read about it or know about it, I'm going to practice exactly the same thing, but it gives me the insight, the foresight, and to ask the right questions, right? As I put my team together. And some people might say, well, if we give them what to do, then they're just going to follow it. They're not going to be creative. And I said, no, that's not the case either. Because there are people, at least I'm one of them, I want to know what are some of the options available? What are some of the things that people consider? And then I can make my own decisions on it because I don't know what I don't know. And I only know what I know.
So what took you down that path? I hear part of an emerging story in terms of how you got interested in DA, but how did you get from being basically, whether it's a Scrum Master or a project manager, how did you get into this category? What really did push you down that route?
Well, actually, I kind of struggled for that for a while. I mean, my career has been, over 25 years, all in consulting industry. And I worked for a, enterprise, global company as a consultant over the years. And I was a programmer. I was a business analyst. I was a solutions architect, project manager, program manager. I performed a number of different roles. And at one point, I was a program manager for Motorola consultant as well. So I dabbled in a lot of different roles. And then I decided to create my own company, specializing in project management. But then the other thing that I was good at was in CRM, customer relation management solution. So I actually created my company and started providing that solution. And what I found myself was that I was performing all these roles of, let's say, the product owner, the Scrum Master, the architect, I shouldn't say developer, because by then I wasn't doing development. I was actually offshoring it to out of the country, but it was more of a configuring and then being the account executive. So I was playing multiple roles. And this is when the Agile was starting to really take off. So I said, hey, you know what? And I, told customers that, hey, we're working in an Agile way. And I was doing work of many, and so I always embraced that, hey, you know what? Last hand off and reducing the handbacks, I recognized that actually was making it more efficient. But there was a point where I realized I can't do it anymore because technology just exploded. And the command of the knowledge of the CRM that I had, I couldn't sustain it on my own. I needed more people, because technology was evolving so fast. And so I was as the Agile was evolving, I was in the midst of it, but in a smaller scale, because I had my own company. And so from there, I said, all right, well, what's the next thing to do? And I was part of a project management institute, been leader there in Chicagoland Chapter for quite some time. And opportunity just kind of presented itself. And when I was attending one of the PMI's 50th anniversary, that's when PMI launched the Disciplined Agile. And I just it's part of it was just luck. I was saying, hey, here's an opportunity. So I got to have an opportunity to talk to Mark and Scott and Al and said, hey, this actually sounds very good. And more I looked into it, I was very convinced that this is actually the right solution or the right approach, because it was pragmatic. It was context sensitive, and it gives you the choices that you can choose from. And so that's kind of the history as to how I got into the DA.
Before we cycle back to Disciplined Agile, I'd like to pull sort of another thread. The origin story of how you got into DA has a number of different spots in which you've reinvented yourself. And what advice would you give people in our industry about the need for reinventing yourself?
One of the reasons I think why Agile has been so successful, or I should say the software developers or the thought leaders, going back to the Agile Manifesto, they were at the perfect storm. They were at the perfect opportunity because, and I talk about this during some of my presentations where my background is in electrical and computer engineering. And so I was really close to the technology, graduating from college or university. And I had a friend that was a program, computer science. We always used to joke around. I would tell him, hey, without the hardware, you have nothing. And then my computer program friend would tell me, well, Jonathan, without the software, you're just a paperweight. I mean, we just kind of joke around. But it's absolutely true. That's how closely they're tied together. And the point I'm trying to make is that because, and you probably heard of Moore's Law, right? I mean, I tie this all the way back because I'm always very analytical saying, where did it start from? So it goes back to the Moore's Law. It says every, 2 years, there are a number of transistors, square inch doubles. And that's when people talk about technology as exponentially, advanced. That's what we really mean, right? That's a great example. And because of that, the software teams or the developers wasn't able to catch up fast enough to the advancement of the technology. A number of transistors that's being increased doubled every 2 years. And so they had to figure out different ways of working. And that's where they came up with the agile way of working because they couldn't do a development and deploy in 18, 24 months or whatever the project typically took in a waterfall. Because by that time, technology has moved on and the software programs, whatever developed is no longer really valid, right? Market has changed. So I guess going back to this, the point I'm trying to make here is that we need to be, that's why the agile was very successful and we all need to be agile. And although the technology has really moved the movement of agile advancement, that is applicable to all the other industry. And so, I hear some people saying when they take our courses, Jonathan, how does this apply to my industry, like insurance, or how does this apply to my, let's say, transportation industry or whatever the industry that they're, or construction for that matter? They need to take a point in which the agile was evolved from a software. They need to apply that towards their industry and be creative. In other words, think of it as a glass half full and use what's been learned and what's been successful in agile and see how they can apply it to their industry.
Circling back to disciplined agile. Disciplined agile has been called a scaling approach. Why does the world need another scaling approach?
Well, I guess simple question answer is why not? Oh, there's several out there's several out there, right? But who's to say what's out there is the best approach? Always we say options are good. Let's see what other ones are out there, right? And what I would say speaking on BFDA is that it's focused on context counts, right? It's not, we don't shove down saying, this is how you do it. This is how you always do it. We are more context sensitive, saying, depending on your situation, be pragmatic. And then the other thing I really love about DA is about its principle, one of which is like, be awesome. And when you might say, hey, be awesome, I don't know, that sounded kind of quirky. Well, when you actually dive into understand what be awesome means, it's about trust, being able to respect one another. And I truly believe in that everything, if you lose trust, you heard this phrase, right? If you lose trust, you lose everything. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And DA is very explicit in how it defines what it means to be awesome and have an awesome team by trusting, giving people the benefit of the doubt and respecting one another. And then helping one another so that each other can, people can help one another out. It's that be agile, right? So I think it's, again, going back to your question about why not a scaling approach? Why not? Ones that are out there, would you say they are successful? I think from what I've heard, there are a lot of challenges on some of the other frameworks out there. But furthermore, DA is not a framework. It's a toolkit. So it leverages ideas and practice from other frameworks, and you get to pick and choose what is relevant for your needs.
I want to pick on one word, and this this may sound combative, but I always get antsy when the word pragmatic gets used, because I think you probably recognize, and I'm sure you don't mean it that way, but a lot of times when people use the word pragmatic, what they really mean is that they're going to do something half-assed. We can say that word on a podcast. So tell me why pragmatic works and it's not just shortcut to not making hard choices.
Well, when an organization, so if not pragmatic means very rigid, right? And in organizations, we know you can always have it in a certain way, right? You hear about everyone has to be co-located or everyone has to be 100% dedicated, which is rarely the case. So the approach from DA is, start where you are and continuously strive to improve. And so there will be condition. And I also believe in, even if they say, hey, this is how you do it, there's always exceptions, because there are everything it's unique. So you can always say that, everyone has to do a certain way. So you have to be pragmatic. I remember even in college, certain things. I go talk to the professor. Well, you know what? Well, there's an exception. And because rules are made to be broken in a way.
That's why everybody should speed and run red lights, because rules are meant to be broken. I'm kidding. I understand.
Well, so ambulance, right? They have the signal, although it's red light, they go through it because that's an exception. Now you have, whistles and bells and to tell them that you're coming, right? But there are always exceptions. And I guess the other thing is, you cannot always fit everything into one specific method or a way of working. You have to give it some, again, exceptions. And it will allow the teams to also explore and find a good medium for them to perform.
I hear you. Again, I get very concerned. As soon as the exceptions are granted, there is no reason for change. And therefore, organizations are stuck in the paradigm of, the old mass production management styles, whereas we're in the age of software and with different management paradigms. Heck, we're late in the age of software. We ought to be looking for whatever's next at this point.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you what you're saying as well, Tom, because we shouldn't be stagnant. We shouldn't be just in your status quo. We need to always think and look at different ways of doing things. We definitely have to, otherwise we're going to be obsolete. We're not going to exist very long, right? So I'm not saying that being pragmatic means be lazy and just hey, this is how it is and we're just going to do it. We all have to think outside of the box, look at differently how you're going to make a difference or do things differently, but do it in a context that's not so radical sometimes where you're struggling. If you're struggling, there's something wrong there. You have to look at ways to see what are the things that you can do to make it less painful, right? And still have some good results. But then as I say that, I think that all really comes down to the mindset. A lot of the challenges that I think organizations have is not on doing agile, but it's on the mindset, being agile. They don't either embrace it or they misinterpret it or doesn't apply it, or some of the team members are not applying it and they're not taking actions to correct it. I think that's where the failures are.
And that goes back to the question I asked you about what advice you would give people in terms of reinventing themselves. What you've just described, You are someone who is always striving to grow and to be different things. If people don't believe that and just think I'm blowing smoke, listen to the origin story about 5 or 6 minutes ago, right? So Are you typical? I would suggest not. So how do we make sure that organizations if they're doing something pragmatic today, are at least understanding that what's pragmatic today is going to have to be the wrong answer tomorrow, that they're going to have to evolve forward.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, you have to be willing to take risks. Okay. You cannot be complacent. You cannot take easy way out. Only way to improve on yourself is to stretch yourself, take risks, and you're going to fail. And as an organization or as an individual, if you're afraid to fail, right, then you're not going to take a leap. Then you're not going to make anything. Einstein said, if you don't, make mistake, you don't make anything. You're not making anything. And I believe that. So from my perspective, I always, look at the environment or the situation and I take risks. It's a calculated risk. Sometimes it just my gut tells me, do it. Right. And I give it my all. And what I do is, once I give it my all, even if it fails, right, I have no regrets, right? And that helps me to, first of all, stay sane. Otherwise, I would go insane, right? And every so often, whether it's a month or a couple of months, I take a step back and says, "Am I on the right path? Am I still focused on my goal?" So I have to do a reflection and checking up on myself on it, and then I just go for it.
People are embracing DA. Are they doing it for the certification or are they doing it for the knowledge, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's both. When you look at Agile, whether it's the Scrum.org or Scrum Alliance, PMI for that matter, there's a lot of dollars, and there's recognition from individual perspective. I think some students that have taken they really embrace it. They want to learn about Disciplined Agile. And then there are those that just want to get the certification to have a check mark that says, yep, I'm certified, right? But that's not going to really help them, right? They have to really understand it. It's, I guess what I can share with you, the other thing is that DA, the way it's structured is very similar like Scrum.org or Scrum Alliance. There's no prerequisite. You can just go and take the course, right? So that's what I mean by it's revenue generating stream from the organization's perspective. But it does provide students the knowledge that they need if they choose to do so, to really use it to advance their career and their organizations.
That makes sense. Jonathan, if you woke up tomorrow morning, had the power, woke up, somebody handed you a magic wand and a cup of your caffeinated beverage of choice, tea, coffee, Coke, whatever, right? and gave you that magic wand, said you had the power to change any two things affecting how work was done. What would those two things be and why?
Organizations embrace change more, allow people to make mistakes, because with currently this day and age, there's so many things popping up left and right. If people are not given that little bit of a safety net, and in DA we talk about psychological safety and embracing diversity. If organizations are more lenient on that and give people the opportunity to take risks, I think we would be much further along. And the second thing is respect one another. I think in organization and team or an organization level, if people can truly respect one another and they can agree to disagree and she'll have that respect, I think a lot of these issues or conflicts would be much less, and people can focus on the work at hand.
Just like to ask one more thing before we start to wrap. You said allow people to fail, to experiment and fail. Obviously, when we talk about failure, it's not fail to fail; it's fail to learn and do it fast and build
That's
forward.
Right.
I can name at least a half a dozen organizations that I've been at a couple of years ago, let's say, at this point, that ran at 110%. We're still booking people to well over 100% capacity. And therefore, anything that went wrong just, obviously just had all sorts of ripple effects. And then I guess you end up not only in overbooked capacity, but you end up with a scenario of fear. And that's again, we go back to the classic age of mass production manufacturing kinds of approaches that are still being used to manage software departments. How do we get past that so that we can actually get to one of your wishes?
Well, I would say what I'm mentioning here is more for organizations that wants to innovate, that wants to advance, right? Because they want to take you got to take risk, right? You got to try things that no one has done before or tried before. And then therefore you're going to fail, right? You have to take that into consideration. And I would say these are for those organizations like Google's or Apple's or Amazon, these companies that are successful because they have taken those leaps. And I'm sure they have the deep pockets to do it, right? To afford to fail. But this is where the innovation happens. And so if you're an organization that wants to create something new, well, you're going to have to allow people to fail, because so then that's how they learn and continuously improve. And to ensure that your organization as entirely doesn't fail, you're going to have some redundancy, meaning you're going to have to put more than, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You're going to have to put it in multiple areas and basically have them go in parallel. Perfect example is the COVID-19 pandemic, right? The vaccines, they had at one point just in parallel saying, let's try multiple vaccines and let's just, as if we're going to produce it, let's just go full force on it. And then you find the one that succeeds and the other ones fail, right? So I guess in that sense, organization has to have that vision as well as that breadth and the ability to afford it, right? And if you can't, then you have to be more cautious about it, I suppose. But that's just that's what it's going to take to innovate and to come up with the new ways of working or new product and solutions that are innovative. You have to allow people to fail.
Jonathan, how would people continue the conversation?
Well, for one, I'm currently the Disciplined Agile Instructor. So what I can encourage people to do is, if you're interested in knowing more about Agile and not only just learn, but have understanding of some options. Where do you start after you take a basic Agile training? What are the things to consider? Well, I would say take Disciplined Agile Scrum Master course if you're new to Agile. And if you're an experienced Agile practitioner, then consider taking Disciplined Agile Senior Scrum Master course. Those are for people with 2+ years of Agile experience, because we do provide a lot of hands-on exercises and knowledge around how to be better at what you do, practicing Agile. So, visit us at vitalitychicago.com, go to our training menu and look us up and some of the trainings that we offer.
Super. And would you mind if people reached out to you on email?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If they can reach me at jlee@vitalitychicago.com. That's JLEE at vitalitychicago.com.
Jonathan, thank you for bringing your wisdom. I know that we sort of went around and went in different places than we'd originally intended. I think that's the fun part of doing this, because you discover more and interesting things about people that you didn't know. And as I said, we've known each other for a little while, and now I know even more about you. So this is that was cool. At this point, I open up the platform for you to promote anything you like. Is there anything else that you'd like to promote?
No, I just want to thank you, Tom, for having me on this cast.
In upcoming events, the Agile Online Summit is nearly here. The clock is ticking. October 25th through the 27th. Tom Henriksen delivers one of the most innovative online conferences. Matter of fact, one of the first online conferences. Check it out. Link in the show notes. Register. There are free and paid attendance options. In Reread Saturday news, One of the most influential books in my career was Peopleware by Tom DeMarco and Tim Lister. One concept in the book was the concept of flow state, being fully in the zone so that a problem or a piece of work can be focused on and delivered. Flow maximizes the amount of value delivered. DeMarco and Lister's introduction to flow paved the way for my interest in the flow framework. Chapter 3 of Project to Product introduces the flow framework. Link in the show notes. Buy a copy of Project to Product, support the author, and the podcast. Next week, an essay, What is Agile? There are a few things that just need to be said. For example, just because you're doing ceremonies doesn't make you agile, and might even make you fragile. In addition, Tony Timble will bring his To Tell a Story column to the Software Process and Measurement Cast. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?